Welcome to the PrePost Film Review. I'm John Asquith.
And I'm Matt Stevenson. So this episode is a little bit different than normal. So this is one of our classic kind of revisit, well not revisit, but
retro!
Retro episodes where John and myself are sort of discovering films or sort of amending blind spots in our filmography, I guess. So we've done some with some Lynch films, and this is kind of the next one we decided to do, which is the Charlie Chaplin film, The Great Dictator, which neither John nor myself have seen. So this is, not only is it going to be an amazing, fun, incredible podcast, but it's an opportunity for John and myself to educate ourselves in film history, because I feel like this is a pretty big hole in our filmic knowledge.
That's right.
So having said that, I mean, we haven't watched a trailer, but I am curious to hear what your expectations of The Great Dictator are, given its reputation and what we sort of know just culturally in general about this Charlie Chaplin film.
Yeah, I think saying this is an education episode is a great way of putting it, because I know next to nothing about this film, I must admit. I've heard about it before, obviously, and I think it's fairly well regarded and respected. But even, at uni and stuff, it's just a film we never touched upon, or I haven't heard a lot of discussion about in other film podcasts I've listened to, or documentaries I've watched, or whatever. So I really don't know. I know that it's a full-length feature made in 1940, written and directed by Charlie Chaplin. So it's like a total creation of his. I know that he speaks in it, which when I first found that out, I was surprised, because I thought he was always more of a silent movie star, and obviously he was, but I didn't even know that he ventured into talking pictures. So I'm excited just to see what that's like. And obviously this is a great big sort of social commentary and parody of World War II and all that sort of thing. So that should be really interesting. But I really know nothing else about it, so I'm just super curious and really excited. Even if it turns out to be not a great film, just to have seen it and to watch something a little older and experience another bit of sort of classic Hollywood cinema, I think is cool.
Just before I give my expectations, I'm just curious, what is your previous exposure to Charlie Chaplin been? Have you seen much of his stuff or any? Yeah,
I don't think I've seen something from start to finish. I think I've seen lots of clips, again, like at uni and in documentaries and stuff. But yeah, his work in general is a massive blind spot for me. We all know him, like everyone knows of him. He's sort of a pop culture icon that's just, people that even aren't into film know who he is. But you sort of always imagine the guy like walking funny and swinging his cane around and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know much more than that. And that is another reason why I'm excited to watch this too, because it's not just like the funny Charlie Chaplin. I think I must admit I have seen what is probably the climax of this movie on YouTube years ago. There is a speech that he gives, a very inspirational sort of speech, and it's a stunning performance. So I'm expecting a different satirical, definitely, but perhaps more of a serious side to him in this movie. But yeah, how about you, Matt? Have you seen much of his stuff?
Yeah, I was going to say, I threw that question your way, not in an attempt to embarrass you for your lack of Chaplin knowledge, but because I'm in exactly the same boat, and I feel like I went through most of my sort of film school without, other than, like you said, the generic clips that everyone's seen and just the knowledge, like this kind of like looming presence of Chaplin in the silent era, and that he was always considered the greatest of what that represented, but I never really engaged or sat down and watched any of his full films. And weirdly, I kind of had an inverse reaction because I felt like he was so well regarded and kind of like the mainstream pick for silent cinemas, poster boy, that I got actually exposed to Buster Keaton kind of a little bit later, and bought like a DVD box set and got quite into some of the stuff that he did. I think I saw like a retrospective somewhere in Melbourne, and absolutely fell in love with his stuff, and kind of almost became anti-Chaplin before I'd ever seen a Chaplin film, and I felt like I was on the Buster Keaton side of things, as if there was some weird divide.
Yeah, they are sort of pitted against each other quite a bit.
Right? And I mean, I loved all the Buster Keaton stuff, and I'm not in no way have seen, anything significant in terms of his bodies of work. I've seen probably like 3 or 4 of his films, but I kind of felt like I wanted to stick up for him. Then, having said all that, just maybe a year or 2 ago, I went and saw a screening of City Lights, which was the first Chaplin film I'd ever seen, and it was so not what I expected. And like the sort of like the bumbling, slapsticky, funny man of the clips, I mean, he's there, but there was such a humanity and I don't know, charisma's the wrong word, but he had this kind of like exuded this aura about him that I just did not expect. That was so different to Keaton, but equally as captivating, just in a very different way. And it just made me completely rethink everything I'd ever kind of assumed about Chaplin. And I think like the like you said, the swinging cane, kind of like wacky mustache, silly hat kind of guy is not really what his films are. I mean, I'm basing this on one film, but like, I guess this is the point of this podcast,
seems to be
right?
the case, though.
I'm hoping exactly like you said. This is, I mean, I haven't. City Lights is like a silent film. I'm interested to see what The Great Dictator brings. Like you said, there's a famous speech. There's certain clips that I've seen. It's super politically motivated as well. Like it came out in a very poignant time, obviously, and he's making a very unsubtle point about the state of the world when it was made. But I'm excited to see that. That's interesting to me, like how he, through his art form, deals with the state of the world and World War II and the rise of the Nazis and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. I'm really excited. And perhaps I wouldn't have been I guess my point is that, perhaps I wouldn't have been if I hadn't have seen City Lights, because I'd kind of talked myself into thinking Chaplin was an overrated clown when in fact I feel like he's much more than that. So I have very high expectations for this film, I guess. Yeah. It's the long-winded way of what I'm trying to say. So I'm excited. I'm very excited.
Yeah. But we're both pretty keen. I think it's interesting that you bring up that your sort of history of what you've thought about Chaplin and how it's changed and things like that. And I remember going through a similar sort of revelation, not having seen his work, but just realizing that he was the creator of his work. I think when I was younger, I thought he was an actor, a star, which he was, but he was also the writer and the director. And in those early days, the cinematographer. And, he helped push the medium forward in those very early days, like in a crowd-pleasing kind of way. But, he's not remembered as a filmmaker. He's more remembered as a performer.
Yeah, or a clown. Like, honestly, I think that's
as a clown, exactly.
the thing that you see him as,
Yeah. So, all of that sort of, leads into us watching this film and being pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I'm so excited. This has made me more excited, this little intro we've just done. I'm so excited now.
yeah, same.
Okay, John, so you've watched your first Charlie Chaplin film, my second Charlie Chaplin film. I'm curious to hear, did it live up to expectations, and did your knowledge based on having seen the final speech previously, did the kind of full film match up to that, and was it sort of politically skewed as you'd expected, I suppose?
I think, firstly, it did live up to my expectations, but it took a little while for me, Matt. I think, given the power of the speech at the end, which I had seen, which is like the climax of the movie pretty much, I totally spoiled myself, by seeing this thing on YouTube. The rest of the movie I really, really like, but it's not like that scene. That is like the final statement of the film where Charlie Chaplin, takes all the humor away and says what he's thinking, and is sort of I don't want to use the word preaching because it's all really good. What's a good phrase to put there, Matt?
He's summarizing the themes of the film, I guess. Or
yeah. And that it's we'll talk about that when we get to it a bit later. But it's such an awesome moment. But yeah, the rest of the movie is satirical and political, but also just there's a lot of skits, and there's a lot of surreal humor and silliness, and timed gags with music, and people being hit on the head with fry pans and things like that. Which of course now that I've seen the movie and it's had a little bit of time to settle, I only watched it today. That all makes sense to me that would be in there. But I think starting the film, and also it's quite long, it's like 2 hours long. So the first third, I was waiting for it to kick into gear and for it to start maybe being funny and a bit serious as well. And that doesn't really happen until the last act, I would say. So yeah, it was an interesting experience for me because I had high expectations. They were lowered a little, but then I found the groove of the movie. And I think it's a thing too, watching a film that's, fairly old, is finding the rhythm of, a different era of filmmaking. And sometimes that takes a little while. But I feel like I did get into this, maybe even up to about halfway through. I was enjoying it, but not loving it, I think. And then it sort of clicked for me, and I found myself laughing a bit more because I was on the same level as the humor, and then noticing how brave, I guess it is, that he was doing this while World War II was starting. Like, it wasn't even after. Because I looked up the making of the film after I'd watched it, and the fact that he had the foresight of what was going on, and what he, again, to go back to that speech, like what he says at the end is so relevant to the time period and actually to now as well. But I became really impressed as I kept watching at the way he was able to handle the humor with the satire, and then to summarize it all at the end. I ended up being really, really impressed and really loving this film. But yeah, it took a little while, and it's still settling on me a little bit. But I mean, there's the humor, if we just look at it on that level, is really good. And as I said, it's something I had to adjust to, not having seen a lot of Chaplin films other than like a few clips. And it almost suits itself to being seen as a short or a clip, because it could get old, I think. And to be fair, some of the pacing and some of the scenes in this movie are too long, I think, by modern standards, and perhaps even by standards of the time. There's a sequence in particular where you're first introduced to the Heinkel character, who's Hitler, and and he's giving a big speech, and then it's like being translated and stuff, and that goes on for a really long time, and the gags kind of, it's funny, and then it's kind of, it just gets a bit old. But overall, the variety of jokes that it has in it, and setups, physical setups and things like that Charlie Chaplin goes through is awesome. I really was impressed by the inventiveness of it, and the way it's shot. And I'm presuming a lot of it is on sound stages and things like that. And the scope and scale of everything is really impressive. In that sense, in the way that most old Hollywood films are, I guess, like the effort that goes into dressing these kind of huge elaborate sets and everything. I love seeing that sort of thing. I feel like I'm rambling maybe a bit, but to summarize, as Charlie does at the end of the movie, I was a little unsure at the start of this, to be completely honest, but fell in love with it by the end. What do you think, Matt? Does that match your experience watching it, or do you disagree with me?
I don't disagree broadly, but I think we almost had the exact opposite experiences of actually watching the film. So because I think I probably had seen that final speech at some point, or at least part of it, but I had sort of no memory of it going in. So I was expecting the other end of the spectrum. So I was expecting the slapsticky, funny Chaplin. So I was on board right from the start, and laughing at all the gags, liking everything. It was kind of like exactly what I expected. I agree the pacing's a bit off it, but then it took me probably until the last third, and then I really started to feel the length when you kind of get introduced to that. It's like the fat Italian-y kind of dictator, the emperor or whatever.
Yeah, and it does slow down.
Yeah, it just seems to sort of drag on. And if I had one complaint, I'd say that you could have trimmed all that down by like 20 minutes, I reckon. And it almost started to lose me a little bit at that point. And it wasn't until sort of after that when the final speech kind of hits, and it kind of flipped everything for me, and I was like, oh, wow, this is actually a very pointed, he's trying to say something very serious here, which I didn't expect, which took me sort of almost by surprise. I mean, when I heard him giving the speech, it did remind me, so I'd obviously seen parts of it somewhere, but because I wasn't expecting it, or wasn't, ready for it to come at the end, I was very pleasantly surprised by that. And I mean, just to mirror what you said in general, I was impressed by the scale and the size of things, especially the beginning and those sort of like World War One scenes where he's in the battles and the trenches, and I loved all that stuff. That was really cool. And in general, I think it's really smart. Like, this is his first talkie, his first sound picture, and to have it almost be about the power of speech is like very apt. And I really liked that at the end, that he would focus entirely on that, given that it was his first chance to actually say something to people, that he would make it fucking important.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
That's what I love about that ending so much.
Definitely.
People would have been like, oh, we finally get to hear him. What does he sound like? All this time he's been this like bumbling crazy guy. I wonder what his voice is like, or just on that kind of basic level, the intrigue of Chaplin's first sound feature. And you have all that silly stuff, and then at the end for him to like look at the camera down the barrel right at you and say all this stuff is just so cool.
And just like you said, the boldness of it, like having it in 1940 in the midst of sort of Nazism and the rise of Hitler, and like it's ballsy to make that your first big on camera statement. You know what I mean? That's so impressive. I do think you can tell that it's his first sound feature, though. Like some of the gags or the set pieces, the sound almost drops out and it's just music, and you can kind of see the lips moving as they talk, but you don't hear what they're saying. It's like he's using or he's used to the old techniques of silent film, and they sort of come back.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. Yeah.
Not necessarily a bad thing, but you can sort of feel him adjusting to having sound. But I think in general he sort of relishes having the use of sound as a comic tool. Like there's the sort of one of the gags of him shaving the guy's face like to the beat of the music.
I love that scene.
It's great,
Yeah,
right? Like there's
that was
lots
so
of
good.
little, and I guess all the speeches and things, like he's having fun with the language a lot and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. Overall, I guess by the end, after that speech, I was super, super impressed. I still think I prefer City Lights as a film. But, I mean, this is kind of inarguably more important and impressive as a historical piece of cinema. But just on a pure enjoyment level, I think I liked City Lights better. But, man, I'm glad we watched this for the podcast. Like, I can't believe I hadn't seen this earlier. Like, it feels so important. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like every film course should show this movie early on as part of your like film history studies. Particularly because, as we say, being Charlie Chaplin's first sound feature, it feels very important in that sense. And I was reading too that it did very well. Like it got a lot of money at the box office and did well internationally. I mean, at least in like the UK and countries where everyone hated Hitler. But yeah, it was genuinely received very well, which I was actually surprised to hear because I can imagine perhaps at the time it would have been perhaps too political or something like that.
Yeah, though I said like I was surprised by the speech at the end, but I was even sort of mildly surprised just at the tonal seriousness of certain moments, like sort of when the stormtroopers come in and sort of trash everything and throw all the tomatoes at the woman, and it's pretty heavy, like not heavy, but for a Chaplin comedy, I sort of wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, absolutely, and knowing what it's referencing as well, There's a great scene actually. They're only like sprinkled throughout those kind of serious moments, but there's a great shot where the stormtroopers are the whole heap of them come in and into the ghetto, and I think Charlie and his love interest, I've forgotten her name, run up to the roof or something like that. Anyway, it like pans up to a bird cage. And all you see is the bird cage, but you hear the sound of like breaking glass and things blowing up and people screaming. And I love that sort of filmmaking where you're not showing exactly what is going on, but you're giving a sense of through sound of something. And I thought that was just a really cool piece of filmmaking and something that Hitchcock would use a lot later on and those sorts of films.
That's a good point. That's kind of like a surprisingly sophisticated use of sound and vision for someone using sound for the first time. You know what I mean? I guess...
Yeah, it stood out to me for that reason, I think. Because a lot of even though the filmmaking is impressive, as I said, a lot of it is very, like, that studio kind of, you dolly in, you're panning here and that sort of thing. But there was a level of sophistication, as you say, which is cool.
Also just in general, it just reminded me of how, like, goddamn funny Charlie Chaplin is. Like, he's just so good at comic timing. There was like little moments that I seared in my memory. Like there was one, just a simple wide shot where he was like Hinkle or walking from one room to the other, and it's like quite a long shot, and he's just walking through, and then he just like trips over the fake Nazi symbol, and it's just so simple, and it was just like a transition between two scenes, but it just, I don't know, just the sort of timing of it and the way it's shot, it just cracked me up. Or another specific example I thought of was the scene when they are trying to decide who's going to bomb the whatever the building is, and they put their coin in one of the puddings, but the woman's put like a coin in all of them. I mean, it goes on for ages, but it's like the punchline of that gag should be like when they all find out that there's a coin in all of them. But then it's like he goes an extra step further and like burps all the coins out, and then there's like another tiny little bit where he just like looks at the coins and just like puts them in his pocket, like pockets them. It was just the gags like never quite ended where you expected them to. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's just so great at that kind of stuff. It's so fun to watch.
Yeah, there were so many sequences like that, and we've mentioned that the pacing goes on a bit. It's a bit too long at times, but then there's moments like that scene, which does go on forever, but it totally works.
Yeah.
And things keep escalating and getting more complicated, and they're like swapping, things, and that's really good. There's another one too that I really liked, where Hinkle is. He's realizing that he could be emperor of the world, and he picks up like the globe, and it's like a balloon, and he just kind of like dances around with it. That was so funny. It was so unexpected.
Yeah.
And he's just like delicately like bouncing it around, and then like using his ass like push it up in the air and all this sort of stuff. It's really funny. And before that, sorry,
No.
I'm just like remembering things now. This is the part where I cracked up the most in the movie. I'm pretty sure it's just before that, and he's so happy that he like runs to a curtain and just kind of like climbs up.
Exactly
and
what I was
up.
about to say. I think it was opposite
like,
though.
What the fuck?
Wasn't he scared of something? Like the guy scares him.
Oh, maybe.
And it was. I guess it's kind of like a cat or something. How it runs up the curtain, and he just goes like straight up this enormous curtain. Yeah, it was hilarious. I was just going to bring that up.
Like a huge curtain, like 2 stories up, basically.
So weird.
And without, I don't know. I guess he like. Some harness could be attached to him or something. Like it was really actually impressive how they did it.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a hilarious moment. Though actually, one thing that I thought didn't quite work or I didn't understand was at the end when they mistake him for Hinkle and he like gets up on stage and has to. I mean, that's a great comic set piece, or the whole thing, where the whole mistaken identity thing. But like, is it not weird that no one ever mentions earlier that he looks exactly like Hinkle?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even the stormtroopers, like it never comes up that they're. I mean, there's a little gag at the start
until he's in the uniform.
Yeah, how they look identical. But I mean, I would just. It's just a silly nitpick, but I expected them to at least set it up somehow in the beginning that they look similar. It was just very weird because when that happened, I was like, "Oh, are we actually meant to be acknowledging that he looks like him?" Because I was just ignoring that for the whole film. That was a bit strange, I thought.
Yeah, that is strange. I mean, that setup is, I guess it's one of those things that you just have to kind of like go with the flow.
Totally, yeah.
Because even if you think about that speech is amazing, but then afterwards when they just be like, oh, that's clearly not him, let's kill
shoot him.
Find the real one.
Yeah, exactly. He kind of ruined his the disguise by delivering that speech.
Yeah.
So overall, we're both impressed, very impressed.
Yeah, definitely. I'm keen to see more of his filmography now, from the silent stuff into what other talkies he did. I have no idea, how many he did, how long he kept filming for. So this is like a great, opening to sort of explore all of that stuff. And I do think it's interesting I keep going on about the speech at the end, but I'm sure it's like relevant ever since it was written, but it just feels like such an important thing for someone in his position to say at that time, and in any time, someone with a large audience to say, we can do better and work together. And he specifically says something about we need to allow the time for science and progress, and this was in 1940, and there's still that battle going on. So yeah, I don't know. I just it really leaves a mark on me, that speech, and I just love that, and was pleasantly surprised that I really enjoyed the rest of the film as well. So yeah, I'd highly recommend to anyone listening to this to check it out.
I completely agree. It does make me want to go back and watch more of his stuff as well, given that it was only the second one I've seen. So maybe perhaps future episodes we could do some more Chaplin retrospectives.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because this was really good. thanks for listening to the PrePost film review. We'd love to hear what you guys thought of The Great Dictator. Have you seen it? Do you think it's Chaplin's best work? What do you think of the speech at the end? Maybe you don't like the film. We'd like to hear from some people that have a different point of view. That would be really cool. You can email us at prepostfilmreview@gmail.com. We try to reply to all our emails, so we'll get back to you with our thoughts or answers to any questions that you might have.
Yeah, yep, totally. We'd also love it if you guys would give us a like on Facebook. That would be very nice of you to do. So please do it. You can also follow us on Twitter at PrePostFR. Another great way to keep in contact with what's going on with the show and other film news. And we'd also like it if you guys would subscribe to us on your podcasting platforms, particularly if you're using iTunes. It's a good way to get us featured in little lists and noteworthy mentions and things like that. Help spread the good word of the PrePost film review. That'd be great. Thank you very much.
That would be great. You can also find John and myself on Letterboxd. There are links to our pages in the show notes for this episode. You can check out what we've been watching outside of the show. And join us next episode when we're going to be chatting about the new, slightly controversial, I guess, horror film, Raw. It should be a fun one, I think.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Blood.
Yeah. Start off with some kisses.
It wasn't even a clap, it was just a skin touch.